Toby knelt in the temple courtyard, his hands stained with blood, his eyes fixed on the woman standing before him, a mermaid with dazzling golden scales, her skin glowing like moonlight rippling on water. Her eyes held neither anger nor mercy, only a profound pain, like a dead sea within. "You ate my child," she said, her voice soft as mist but piercing Toby's heart like a blade grazing bone. He wanted to scream that he didn't know, that he was only hungry, that it was just a creature lying still in the net. But how could he justify a child with shimmering golden scales and a human face? How could he wash the blood from his tongue? And now, as the villagers looked at him like a monster, she did not curse him, but cursed his unborn child instead. Toby felt his insides emptier than ever before. For the first time in his life, he prayed for a different kind of hunger, a hunger for forgiveness. Once upon a time, in a Black American community village called Shallow Root, where the morning mist hung thick like an ancestral blanket over the swamp, people whispered greetings to the water before casting their nets, for everyone knew the water remembered, and sometimes it grew angry. In a ramshackle hut nestled behind a stand of ancient willows, Toby lived alone. His clothes were patched together with rope and bark, his meals were scraps of dry cornbread gathered from others' weddings, and his sleep, when it came, was a parade of images of gaunt hands turning over an empty pot. Since his grandmother's passing, Toby had no one in the world to call by name, save for himself and his hunger. That morning, his stomach twisted like wrung-out cloth, his head throbbing with the dull beat of an ancient funeral drum. He trudged to the water's edge, carrying his father's tattered net. The soul swamp appeared as it always did, flat as a mirror, black as a cat's eyes at night, and eerily silent. No frogs croaked, no insects buzzed, no wind stirred. Even the most avid fishermen never ventured there. They said it was a place where the water could speak. But hunger heeded no rumors. It only urged him on. Toby took a deep breath and cast his net. One throw, two throws, the net drifted weightlessly. But on the final pull, a sharp tug nearly knocked him backward. He braced himself and hauled, hoping for a massive catfish or at least a few plump water snakes. But what the net brought up was neither fish nor snake. It was a creature the size of a newborn child, its skin shimmering like molten gold mixed with moonlight, its scales fine as dragonfly wings, and its eyes closed as if dreaming. It didn't cry. It didn't struggle. It lay still, as though it knew its fate. Toby stood frozen. He recalled his grandmother's tales of the children of the deep water, sacred beings born in the heart of seas and sacred wells, carrying ancient souls and powers from the dawn of creation. But those were just stories, told to scare children from playing in the water after dusk. No one had ever seen one, until now. Toby's stomach groaned again. His vision blurred, whether from hunger or fear. His trembling hands lifted the creature, touching its skin warm and smooth, as if woven from threads of light. But in Toby's eyes, at that moment, it was still just food. He built a fire. The first cut through the golden scales sounded like tearing silk. He didn't look at the creature's face as he placed it over the flames. Not because he was callous, but because if he looked, he feared he'd lose the courage to survive even for one more day. That afternoon, his belly was full. And as night fell, Toby slept deeply, as if he'd never known fear. But that sleep was not peaceful. He dreamed of water rising inside his hut. From the water, an old woman emerged, her hair long and white as cattails, her eyes milky without pupils, her skin wrinkled like the swamp's surface in drought. She wasn't angry. She didn't weep. She only stared at him for a long time before saying, "You have eaten a child of the gods." Toby tried to speak, to explain, but the old woman shook her head. Your heart is not evil, only too hungry. So I will give you a chance." Her voice blended with the sound of water, like a lullaby from Mother Earth. "From tomorrow, your net will be full of fish. But remember this: wealth tests the soul more than hunger." The next morning, Toby woke, his back soaked with cold sweat. He thought it was just a dream, until he cast his net and pulled up 12 fat catfish. For the first time in years, he could eat his fill and have enough left to sell. From then on, his net was full every day. But at the bottom of the net, there was always a single golden scale, silently clinging to his hand like a reminder. And has anyone ever survived a curse without paying a price later? From that day on, fish filled Toby's net as if the entire soul swamp had offered all its life to one man. Every morning, his net hauled up no fewer than 24 plump catfish, fat water, snakes, and sometimes even strange creatures no one had ever seen, their colors shimmering like fragments of a shattered sky. Rumors spread as fast as fire through dry forest. People from neighboring swamp states, from as far as Mobile, Baton Rouge, and even New Orleans, came to buy fish from the man chosen by the water. Toby traded fish for money, money for timber, and timber for a house. The tattered hut of old was replaced by a 2-story cedarwood home, its roof tiled with green sea-fired ceramics, its windows adorned with stained glass imported from the north. He hired craftsmen and servants from Savannah, hosting feasts every night. The swamp no longer recognized him, but at every banquet, Toby kept his habit of washing his hands thoroughly before eating. For sometimes, as the water ran down his palms, he could still see a faint golden glimmer between his fingers, like blood that hadn't fully dried. The people of Shallow Root began to bow their heads in greeting as he passed. Children whispered, calling him the Fish King, but those looks weren't enough. Toby wasn't just hungry for food anymore. Now he hungered for authority, for respect. He wanted to be called a noble, not for his fish, but for his bloodline. And so, a story was born. Toby began to claim he was the exiled son of a West African coastal kingdom, where silver-capped waves bowed before the throne, where his father had been a king betrayed by his own brother. He, the surviving son, had been spirited away to America by his grandmother to escape death. And now, through the power of his ancestors, he had returned. No one verified his tale, no one dared ask. For his money had silenced the entire village. But Toby didn't stop there. After buying their trust, he set his sights on Princess Alika, the daughter of High Priest Akobi, considered the living soul of Shallow Root, a patriarch without a throne whose words were law, guarding the land's spirit through ancient rituals. Alika was as beautiful as the first dawn of the season, her skin a rich cinnamon brown, her eyes deep as sacred wells, her gait gentle yet unyielding. She was not the kind of woman easily swayed by gold or silver. But Toby believed power could make any heart tremble. He gifted her hairpins carved from ivory bronze mirrors from Ghana and indigo-dyed Yoruba silk dresses. Each gift came with a mythic tale. Each word was a thread weaving tighter the image of a displaced prince. Alika didn't fully believe him, but she couldn't deny that Toby intrigued her. And curiosity is the first crack that leads to a heart's fracture. Toby requested permission from High Priest Akobi to hold a betrothal ceremony at the ancestral temple, a privilege no outsider had ever been granted. His audacity sent shockwaves through the village. The community split in two, those who admired him and those who doubted him. But Akobi, after many nights of communing with the spirits, finally nodded. Perhaps he saw something in Toby's eyes, both familiar and strange. Or perhaps he had foreseen the outcome, but chose to let fate flow as it would. The day of the betrothal ceremony arrived. Toby donned a hand-embroidered robe, a silk cap on his head, and stepped onto the temple courtyard under hundreds of watching eyes. Alika sat beside her father, like a goddess stepped out of a sacred painting. They didn't know that, in just a few more drumbeats, the ancient silence of the water would speak. Dear audience, take a moment to relax or grab a glass of water. Then continue listening to the story. There are surprises yet to come. Comment the number 1 if you find the story intriguing so we know you're still with us. No one heard her footsteps, only felt the air in the temple turn cold in the midday summer heat. The rows of candles around the courtyard flickered out on their own. No wind, no rain, just a strange silence flooding in like mist from the depths of the water. Then, from nothingness, she appeared silent as a dream, sharp as an ancient curse. She stepped into that sacred space like a spirit rising after thousands of years of slumber. Her skin glowed, not like human flesh, but like moonlight steeped in holy waters. Golden scales covered her arms and neck, shimmering with each step, producing a sound no ear could hear, but every heart could feel. Her hair flowed like seaweed, buoyant and gleaming like stars lost in a midnight ocean. Her eyes round, deep, and red burned like embers in icy frost. Toby didn't need anyone to tell him. He knew instantly who she was. The woman standing in the temple was no human. She was the reckoning of a debt he thought he had escaped. She didn't look at Alika, nor at the high priest, nor at the villagers. Her eyes rested only on Toby, as if all the rituals, gold, and claims of royalty were nothing but a thin, meaningless veil. She stood there, silent, until all life around Toby seemed to halt. Leaves stopped falling, hearts stopped beating, breaths became too heavy to bear. You ate, my child. Her voice didn't come from her mouth, but from deep within the spine. It wasn't human speech, but an echo from shores long dead, from forgotten ancient tongues. It made Toby's head tilt forward slightly, like a scolded child, not out of anger, but from a pain so profound it left no room to beg for mercy. He fell to his knees, not because he was forced, but because his knees gave way. No one said a word. No one dared flee. Even High Priest Akobi held his breath, for they all knew this woman did not belong to this world. But she didn't kill him. She didn't set everything ablaze as the stories told of angry gods. She merely raised her hand, pointing lightly at Toby's chest. A faint glow spread and then vanished. Your firstborn child will be mine. No one understood the full weight of those words, except Toby, for only he knew what was in his heart. Only he knew that the night before, Alika had placed his hand on her belly, where the first faint pulse of a new life had just begun to form. With that, she vanished as if she had never been. No smoke, no wind, no echo. Only a chilling void remained where she had stood. The villagers began to murmur. Silence turned to chaos. A woman screamed. A child wailed. Someone whispered, "That was Isira, the ancient sea goddess." Those who had once stood by Toby quietly stepped back. Money could not shield against a curse. Toby remained kneeling. Sweat and tears mingled on his forehead, dripping from his chin like melting candle wax. His hands clutched each other. Trembling like a frightened child's, no one helped him up. For no one wanted to touch a man marked by the gods. And from that moment, Toby was no longer the Fish King. No longer the exiled prince. No longer anything at all. Only a man indebted to his very soul. But how does one repay a debt with the flesh and blood yet to be born? From the moment he was cursed, Toby was driven from Shallowroot like a plague-stricken outcast. No one met his eyes. No one spoke his name. His cedarwood house was torn down. The ancestral altar burned to ashes. The servants who once bowed to him now turned away, spitting on the tracks of his footsteps. He gathered a few scraps of dry cornbread, a rusty knife, and quietly slipped into the swamp like a soul with no place to return. Night fell faster there than elsewhere. The ancient willows seemed to reach out, strangling the last rays of light. Toby stumbled through root-tangled paths, his feet caked in mud, his heart heavy. Snake bites, leeches, hunger, fever. He no longer knew how many days he survived. Each night that passed, Toby dreamed of the unborn child calling to him in the voice of water, surging, shimmering, choking amid black waves. Then one night, when the moon lay broken on the water's surface, Toby collapsed beside the edge of a bottomless ravine, a place where even the wind dared not blow. From the mist rising like grave smoke, a thin, resonant voice echoed. It wasn't Isira, the goddess. It wasn't the old woman from his dreams. It was someone else, cold, but not cruel. Her name was Kenna. Her hair was long and black, her skin pale green like moss beneath water, her eyes colorless. She was the guardian of the abyss, a gate connecting three realms: the mortal world, the depths of water, and the spirit realm. Kenna didn't ask about Toby's past. She didn't accuse him. She only stood there, her hand lightly touching his forehead as if gauging the warmth of a soul nearing its end. She said, "You can atone, but it comes at a cost. Are you willing?" Toby nodded, no tears left to shed. Only the child in Alika's womb remained the life curse to leave this world with its first cry. Kenna offered a bargain. He must steal the heart of the water, a sacred gem, holding all of Isira's power. It lay in the Pearl Palace, a place only gods and pure spirits could approach. If he succeeded, she would help him save his child from the sea goddess's grasp. Kenna granted Toby the ability to breathe underwater. His skin turned green, his fingers flattened like fins, his eyes adjusted to the dim light of the depths. A man who was once human now became something in between. Not fish, not man. Only a father in a form yet to be named. Under the fractured moonlight, Toby dove into the ravine. The world beneath the swamp unfolded like a sealed kingdom. Coral grew into walls, pearl shells stacked like temple steps, glowing algae hung like ghostly lanterns. And at the center of it all stood the Pearl Palace, silent, proud, and cold as a god's heart. Toby faced no resistance. Perhaps Isira never imagined a mortal would return to this place. He swam through halls of giant seashells, past breathing stone statues, and finally before him was an ivory altar, atop which rested a silver-blue gem, the heart of the water. When his hand touched the gem, a surge of energy shot through him like lightning. It didn't hurt, but his entire being expanded, as if he had grazed the memories of thousands of years of oceans, curses, and deaths, never mourned. Toby gripped the gem and fled the palace, but as he passed the final gate, he heard a shattering sound. Crack! The palace's seal broke. The water surged, a black whirlpool swallowing the exit. Veins of light twisted, distorting all sense of direction. Toby didn't know that, in that moment, he had shattered the balance holding peace between the three realms. And if there was anything more terrifying than the wrath of a god, it was the chaos of ancient, nameless spirits unleashed. Toby returned in his altered form, part man, part water, as if he had never been born of the earth. The heart of the water gem, still warm against his chest, glowed faintly, as if dreaming. He sought out a settlement on the swamp's edge where people avoided speaking his name as they would a demon's. But in the dawn's light, a figure appeared at the camp's gate. Alika. Her hair hung loose, her face weary, her eyes brimming with tears, and her belly now swelled, round and taut, like a living warning. No words were needed. The two stood gazing at each other for a long time. Toby knelt, pressing his hand to her belly, where a tiny heartbeat pulsed faintly, striking his heart like waves. For the first time in months of fleeing, Toby wept. Not from fear, but because he knew he still had something to redeem. But fate waits for no one. A day later, a caravan of camel riders from the Red Sand region arrived in Shallow Root. At their head was a blind old woman, her eyes white as morning mist, leaning on a eucalyptus staff. She asked for no directions, greeted no one, and walked straight to Alika's house as if she had lived there since the swamp was still a sea. She was a seer, the last to hear the voice of Mother Earth. In a nameless ceremony under candlelight, the old woman declared that the child in Alika's womb was the reborn soul of the child Toby had eaten the son of the goddess Isira. A life taken in sin, now returned in mortal form, but no longer a frail being. It was a power yet to be defined. Alika wailed. Her shoulders shook like palm leaves in the wind. She couldn't understand why her firstborn had to bear all the resentment, love, and sins of its parents. Toby remained silent. For deep within, he had known. He had felt it since the first night he dreamed of golden eyes in black water. The seer continued, "This child carries not just two bloodlines. It is a bridge between two realms. If loved and guided, it could unite the three worlds, the mortal, the aquatic, and the spiritual. But if harmed, manipulated, or driven to hatred, it could open the final gate and plunge all into darkness." In that moment, Toby realized the gem he had stolen was not just the key to saving his child, but a double-edged blade. For its power did not belong to humankind. And if placed in the wrong hands, it would be the end. Alika withdrew into the shadows for many days after. Each night, she whispered to her unborn child, as if pouring all her love into it, cleansing the hatred flowing in its father's blood. Toby sat before the abandoned ancient temple, clutching the gem in his palm, his eyes fixed on the swamp where it all began and now might end. The people of Shallow Root grew fearful. They heard whispers in the water, saw figures gliding through the forest, saw fish float dead with red eyes. They knew something was waiting. Something was being born, and the world was no longer as it had been. Before the child could utter its first cry, Shallow Root was already trembling. Winds blew against their natural course, and the swamp water turned a deep green like diluted blood. Rumors spread like wildfire. A child is coming, and it will bring a flood to swallow the entire South. No one dared speak it aloud, but all prepared to flee. Beneath the river, creatures dormant for thousands of years began to stir. They had no distinct form, only water shaped into bodies, souls crystallized into warriors. The ancient watchers, older than the gods, witnesses to the formation of rivers and the first songs of water, now opened their eyes. The birth of a hybrid soul, bearing both life and vengeance, awakened a thirst for retribution that had never slept. In a place deeper than the riverbed, beneath the unseen currents of nameless realms, a queen arose. Mavira, the shadow of the ocean, once sealed in the abyss by Isira for disrupting the flow of souls. Now she returned in a thick shroud of black smoke, her eyes twin whirlpools without end. Mavira sought out Isira, needing no threats. She simply said, "You let your child return to the mortal world. Now, let me take it back." But Isira was no longer a neutral goddess. The pain of losing her firstborn, the obsession of watching its soul devoured by a human, had transformed into the most primal instinct, motherhood. In whatever form, that child was still her flesh and blood, and she would let no one else touch it. A war began without declaration. Those once allied with Azira, the ancient dwellers of the deep, now stood behind Mavira. Shadows of water formed ranks. Shapeless figures with eyes but no mouths, limbs but no shadows, moved like smoke through stone cracks. As they passed, the river foamed, trees withered, birds flew backward, and the sun turned purple. Toby and Alika hid in Shalaroot's ancient temple, once a shrine to ancestors, now just a pile of moss-covered stones. Alika went into labor early. No midwife, no medicine. Only the sound of thunder and faint calls rising from the water's depths. Each of her contractions raised the water outside by an inch. Each scream killed scores of fish. The child was coming, and the world was unprepared. Isira appeared not in the temple, but in the sky. She no longer walked but glided, like a piece of river suspended in the air. Her hair stretched to touch the ground, her eyes red as fire etched in ice. She spread her arms, casting an invisible barrier around the temple. No shadow of water could enter. No spear could touch it. Inside, Alika's water broke. Blood mingled with waves. Toby gripped her hand, the other still clutching the sacred gem. He didn't know if he was a father or a guardian, a bringer of life, or the last witness to a world's collapse. And then the first cry rang out. It was not human, nor divine. It was a sound that shook the sky, raised the water, and cracked the earth's depths. Yet strangely, after that cry, the winds stopped. The water ceased rising. The army of shadows halted. Everything stood still in a shared breath. The boy was born. His skin gleamed silver, like moonlight spilled on stone. His eyes were black as the abyss. Each blink rippled the water's surface. Each breath revived green on branches long dead. A child born of sin, sacrifice, divinity, and humanity. A soul that could save or end everything. No one knew when the boy first opened his eyes. They only knew that when his gaze touched the earth, roots rose as if trembling. When it touched the sky, dark clouds scattered as if banished. But he didn't cry. He only smiled. A toothless, wordless smile that made the entire world pause for a moment. Every creature, from human to divine, fell silent, as if awaiting the first pronouncement. Toby held the child in his arms, steady but with a heart beating out of rhythm. The heart of the water gem lay still in its coarse cloth, glowing as if awaiting a final command. Alika lay beside him, exhausted, but with eyes undimmed by weakness. She knew this child was not just theirs. It was the nexus of all three realms. And a single sound from its tiny lips could reshape all of fate. Outside the temple, the battlefield had gone still. Mavira stood atop the highest rock, her cloak of shadowed water no longer stirring. Her army, those ghostly forms, stood motionless as statues. Even Kenna, rising from the abyss, said nothing. She only watched. In the dense mist of the spirit realm, Elder Kalonji, the keeper of the ancestral flame, approached. He was neither old nor young. Only a light carrying the breath of ancient traditions, of thousands of years of chants, soul calling, and balancing the mortal realm. He knew the coming battle would not be fought with weapons, but with sacrifice. Kalanji drew near Mavira, holding a blood charm passed down through 4 generations of shamans. No one stopped him, for all knew, when a keeper of the flame chose to burn himself, no door remained safe. He kissed the charm, closed his eyes, and whispered. A fire blazed, not from the earth, but from within his blood. A crimson flame. It didn't burn flesh, only darkness. Mavira shrieked. The bond between her and the ocean, between her and the army of the deep, snapped like a soul thread stretched to its limit and broken. In that moment, Toby knew the time had come. He climbed the outcrop, clutching the sacred gem. Without hesitation, he hurled the heart of the water into the abyss. Its silver blue light fell like a shooting star, vanishing into the cold depths. A tremor followed, sending strange ripples, and from the sky, Izira appeared. She wore no armor, no crown. She was only a heart of blood, deep red, silent but stronger than any magic. She spread her arms, shielding her child, shielding Alika, shielding against all the wrath of darkness, and her blood began to flow to the ground. Each drop fell like a ruby, merging with the earth, the roots, the hearts of men. The child opened its mouth. No sound formed, only a breath, like a gentle breeze across a lake. But all bowed, every wound healed. The waters receded from the fields. Children stopped crying. The elderly sighed in relief. And in the sky, a rainbow curved into the shape of embracing arms. No one understood that language, but all knew the child had chosen. No war, no hatred, no bloodshed, only one thing: rebirth. The next morning, the first sunlight after days of haze shone down on Shallow Root, but no one hurried to step outside. The entire village seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would follow the sacred silence of the night. And then, from the heart of the cracked ancient temple, a sound burst forth. It was the soft lullaby of Alika, sung for the first time since she gave birth. The boy was named Obasi, meaning the one who brings balance. It was a name not bestowed through ritual or decree, but one that arose from a feeling deep within the earth, from the spirits that had long slumbered, from the waters that had once raged. When that name was spoken, the wind stirred, the birds returned to the sky, and grass began to grow again where ashes still lingered. Obasi was unlike any other child. From the very first moment, his eyes were not of the same color. One eye was the eye of deep water, fathomless as an abyss, shimmering with a cool blue light that did not belong to the earth. The other was the eye of the dense forest, rich with the brown of soil, yet harboring a smoldering fire. Whenever he smiled, the village well surged as if touched by a mother's hand. Whenever he was sad, the ground cracked and dried, small fissures appearing like the size of the earth. At first, the villagers were afraid, but their fear was outweighed by the hope they saw in the toddler's hesitant steps. Obasi grew quickly, like an ancient tree nourished by the blood of ancestors and the milk of gods. Beneath his feet, his footprints left not mud, but wildflowers blooming in their wake. One night, Isira appeared for the last time. No longer was she the goddess who once stirred the seas into fury. She was like a mother who had endured war, loss, and in the end, accepted love as her farewell. She stood before Toby not with anger, not with blame, only with a voice as gentle as a windless lake. "I forgive you," she said, "for I see you have learned to love a child not of your own. But do not forget, Obasi belongs to no one. He belongs to destiny. If you teach him to love, he will heal the world. But if he learns to hate, no land will survive. With that, she dissolved into the thin mist of the marsh, leaving no sound, no farewell. Only the faint light reflected on the water remained. Toby held Obasi in his arms, no longer the fisherman who had deceived, who had killed by mistake, who had been exiled. He was now a father, not by blood, but by a heart that had learned to offer itself to something greater than itself. Alika sat beside him, her hand lightly touching the water in a stone bowl. The water's surface reflected not only their faces, but also things yet to come. And she knew the story did not end here. It had only just begun. For that child, with two eyes bearing two realms, would have to grow up amidst fragile boundaries between love and hate, between man and God, between hope and annihilation. But sometimes, the greatest thing does not come from merging two worlds into one. It comes from choosing a path no one has ever walked and naming it with kindness itself. Would Obasi have the strength to become the bridge, or would he become the final wave to drown everything? The answer could only come when he learned to call himself by the name of light. And so, from the dark mud of poverty, mistakes, and curses, a child rose, carrying the hope of three worlds. Obasi was neither a perfect savior nor the monster of rumors. He was simply a mirror, reflecting all the light and darkness that we have sown upon this earth. Through this story, we see love does not require the reason of blood ties, but courage. Forgiveness does not come from forgetting, but from understanding. And sometimes, those who have done wrong are the ones who hold the key to healing. Obasi will grow up. He will have to choose. And we, those watching this story, will also have to choose how to live, how to love, and how to heal ourselves. If you believe that Obasi's story is not yet over, leave a comment below. Which path do you want to see the boy choose? What do you think will happen if he chooses wrongly? Don't forget to follow the channel to not miss part 2, When Obasi Speaks, and share this story if you feel your heart has been touched by someone. We will meet again in a new chapter where light and darkness will no longer be enemies, but lessons.